Hello and welcome to One Trek Mind with me, Michael.
And me, Raptor.
And today we're going to be discussing Season 3's Episode 7 of Strange New Worlds, What is Starfleet? And I'll go ahead and let Fletcher do a sort of recap on this one. We're going to do something a little bit different here just because of the nature of the episode, how it was edited and everything.
Just to begin with, I think this is one of the most interesting episodes Star Trek has ever done, but also the most irritating at how it squandered its premise, because I think it ended up saying or delivering a message it didn't mean to deliver. And yeah, because of the way that this episode is, basically this episode is a documentary, more like a sort of, I think the closest thing I can liken it to are sort of modern police documentaries where they have the police crew that have been involved in, raids or car chases, etc., talking to the camera while the events play out. This is a documentary made by Erica Ortega's brother, the one that he's been mentioning all along this season, asking the question of what is Starfleet, and more specifically, at what point is a Federation or is Starfleet an empire? At what point is there a distinction between them? At least that's how it starts. Throughout the episode, we have a sort of two different sort of aspects. You have the actual event, which is ongoing, which is Starfleet responding to a conflict between two different parties, one party obviously winning the conflict and one party not, and Starfleet are getting involved in assisting the party that are not winning by delivering the equivalent of a biological nuclear bomb to them. While that whole thing is playing out, we have interviews with the crew, we have him talking to all of the major bridge crew as well as Mbenga, and getting not only their thoughts but also questioning them about what they think about what's going on. The episode goes through all of the events to a point about halfway through, probably actually closer towards the end, where there is a conversation between Uhura and Erica Ortega's brother, where he is then put under fire for making the documentary by Uhura. And that is what torpedoes the entire storyline, at least as far as me and I think Michael are concerned.
I 100% agree. That scene kind of killed the episode for me.
And then they very quickly wrap the episode up at the very end with him answering the question of what is Starfleet? It's the people, it's the family on board your ship. They are what is Starfleet. But unfortunately, by this point, the episode has already lost itself. And because of the way it's edited and you get all these various interviews and all over the show, it's really, really difficult to do more of a linear rundown, which we'd normally do. So what I would suggest to people is, if you haven't seen this episode, even if you're not watching Strange New Worlds, because I don't think you need to be watching Strange New Worlds for this one.
No, you can just jump in.
Watch this episode, because it is interesting, but also, I think, really, really bad. Then come and listen to what we're going to say. If you've already seen it, good. We're going to crack on. Let's start with the positive bits first. I think this is the most interesting thing Star Trek has attempted to do since perhaps the musical episode.
I agree. I feel like when it comes to the criticism of Strange New Worlds always has a gimmick in terms of its episode, this is one of my favorite gimmicks that they've done. Like, actually have the episode be the documentary itself and see the Federation, or more specifically Starfleet, from the perspective of a non-Starfleet member in documentary form. I think that's a really cool idea, and I really liked the editing style of the episode, the filmmaking choices here. I think a lot of that was really cool, and it made it feel unique and interesting, and it had my attention from beginning to end.
Agreed. Like I said to you earlier on, this puts me in remembrance of a Stargate SG-1 episode. I won't give too much away because me and Michael are currently going through Stargate SG-1, but the premise is a film crew going to Stargate Command and witnessing witnessing a event and them filming the event and the people involved in that event and getting a sort of maybe second person view of it.
A sort of impartial view, you know, an outsider's perspective.
And Star Trek has never really done that. They kind of glanced it over with Picard Season 1, where you have the newsreader, that news woman talking to Picard and questioning him about stuff. I think them doing it in Strange New Worlds, I think it's great. I think this is actually a really interesting possible episode. And the question of what is Starfleet, I mean, that's a general question that Trekkies have argued about for a long time. You know, is it a military? Is it not a military? Where do you draw the line? I
think it's inherently a really interesting thing to question. Like, again, what is the difference between Starfleet being this, you know, socialist paradise versus an empire? Like, what truly is the difference when they both colonize, they both impose their will upon foreign entities at times, they both have strong military forces? Like, what is the difference? And that inherently is a really interesting question to be asking and getting into. However, the way they answer that question, I think, is really, again, I won't get into it right this very second, but I think it is a dangerous line of thinking. Truly a very dangerous way of viewing this, the answer to this question. I really, really, really disliked it. I went from liking the episode to really hating it pretty quickly.
In the space of essentially a couple of sentences. But again, staying with the positives, I really liked the way that it was shot, and I liked the way that the actors played themselves having an interview. Like, it felt like a documentary. It felt like these were not actors playing characters. It felt like these were actors playing characters having this interviews, which meant they couldn't, you know, they had to be not necessarily how they are as their characters.
Yeah, they felt like real people to me.
Yeah. Even though it was a relatively slower paced episode in terms of action and that sort of thing, all the major beats felt like they were impactful. Thanks to this sort of documentary film style. The fact that every shot wasn't perfect and at some points the camera would be disabled or whatever,
or just fixed in a single position because he's using like security footage from the ships, which does answer my question: do these ships have security feeds? Because there's many episodes in Star Trek where like something happens and they're like, well, we weren't there, we don't know what happened. I'm like, do you not have security cameras on this ship? And this episode pretty much answered, at least this ship does in fact have security feeds, so that's nice to know.
And I like the way that it was all actually made like it's an actual Federation film. So at the very start you get like an opening telling you that there's various declassified materials, but there are some things still in the episode that are classified, so they get redacted out or they get like muted so you can't hear them. So it even feels like it's a real documentary of a military vessel, or at least a military-esque vessel. But that's, I think, as far as the good stuff goes.
Yeah, I mean, again, I really liked those aspects of the episode. I guess one other thing I would like to say I enjoyed was the creature design of the big...
Oh, yes.
I can't remember what they called it.
Guru or something?
Chicani, maybe?
It's something like that. It's basically a big underwater butterfly that can also live in space.
I thought it looked really cool. And I was like, in terms of like alien creature design, very neat. Reminds me very much of some like famous TNG episodes when they encounter new life. Again, I feel like it really fulfills that promise of, new life and new worlds that Star Trek has always promised. So I thought that was really cool. However,
yes.
I would like to transition here into the problems.
So let's give some detail on that. So this conflict that is presented in this episode, I think, is very clearly supposed to be Israel-Palestine right now. You're presented it as one faction has attacked another faction. The faction that has been attacked has lost somewhere in the region of 9 million lives. The faction doing the attacking, about 100,000. So it's very clear who are losing and who the aggressor is, in a very similar fashion to Israel-Palestine right now. Starfleet has been asked to go in and supply some sort of cargo, but also to go and find one of these creatures. Now, initially it's presented as it's called livestock, that it's almost part of terraforming or something like that, but then it's very quickly understood that this is actually a weapon. This creature can create energy within it and then release it essentially in a weapon of mass destruction method.
Yeah, just a huge burst of radiation all at once that just eviscerates whatever it's targeting.
Yeah, it knocks the Enterprise about quite badly when it does it. The creature has actually been genetically manipulated by the faction that's losing the conflict to be like this. They've manipulated it to be hyper-aggressive and to use this at every opportunity, and they're controlling it via essentially a shock collar. Now, at first, Starfleet's perfectly happy to be involved in this until it's revealed that it's being controlled against its will. Then Starfleet turns around and says, we can't do this. They handle the problem, which I'm sure we'll discuss in a bit. They protect the rest of the species on this planet and essentially refuse to help deliver any more of these things.
Which I still think is making it too easy. Because Starfleet Command sure seemed perfectly willing to go along with this plan before they learned about the shot caller aspect of it. And I'm like, does that change things? Yes, but does it change things so drastically that they would actually no longer proceed with this plan? I'm not personally convinced that that's the case. It felt like a very easy cop-out for the episode to be like, oh, well, we have to take the morally upstanding choice here and not abuse this creature. But again, given the circumstances of it seems a little more complicated than that. Yes. And they just kind of skirt around that by being like, oh, well, this is basically just animal abuse and we won't do it. And I'm like, again, do I think that's the right call? Yeah, kind of. But at the same time, it's being used by a people that are basically being genocided out of existence right now, and you agreed to help them. So I don't know. I just feel like they really sidestep that as an issue by making it a morally righteous decision because the creature is being controlled in such a way. And it felt a little disingenuous to like what Starfleet was attempting to do in the first place.
But that's not the biggest problem. So throughout this whole episode, Erica Ortega's brother is constantly asking questions, constantly criticizing. You know, he's pushing the crew like, why are you happy delivering a weapon of warfare and weapon of mass destruction?
I mean, he's playing devil's advocate. He's taking the opposing side, which I think any good interviewer,
journalist or interviewer would do. You know, the crew's defense is mostly, I'm following orders. Most of this is classified. We trust each other, but we do what we're told by Starfleet, which has some...
Which I think I have a little
very
bit of issue
problematic
with that
things.
as
I'll
well.
go in. Yeah, we'll discuss that as well. However, where the episode completely collapses is this conversation between Uhura and Ortega's brother. Ortega's brother pushes Uhura and questions why she's okay with this. And Uhura spins it round and says, what you're doing, making this documentary, you're here with a particular point of view. You're trying to paint the Federation as the bad guys or Starfleet as the bad guys. And you're doing this because you don't like Starfleet because of what's happened to your sister, and that's not right. Or rather, you can't criticize what we're doing just because you don't like us. And I think that is fundamentally a terrible message, because that's the same sort of crap that right-wing conservative nutjobs will use whenever someone challenges their opinion. Now, their response is not, let's have a discussion about why we disagree. It's, you don't like me, therefore your opinion doesn't matter. And that is a terrible message for Starfleet, for Star Trek to be presenting.
I agree. Again, like I said, I think it's a dangerous line of thinking to be presenting
dangerous.
here. It's how you lead yourself into fascism, just blindly accepting that Starfleet, under any and all circumstances, is always doing the right thing, which is why we never question orders. We always do what we're supposed to do because it's always correct. And if you question us, or if you come at us sideways in any kind of way, it's because you have a personal issue with us. It's not because you actually have any merit in your arguments, which I completely disagree with. I'm like, again, a lot of the questions he was asking in this episode are perfectly valid. Like, how many people have you killed? How many orders have you disobeyed? Why are you okay with delivering this weapon when you know that this is a kind of morally ambiguous situation? Those are perfectly valid things to criticize and question.
It catches Mbenga out in a complete lie. I mean, Mbenga basically refuses to discuss his past, but our good journalist, being good journalist, has already gone and got his personal file and discovered all the redactions and everything else. So he even catches one of the crew out in a direct lie to the audience.
Yeah, and again, I think something that New Trek has done perhaps a bit too much, but not necessarily in a bad way, is question the validity of Starfleet and the Federation. Like, how perfect are these things really? Because nothing is actually perfect. And I think it is 100% correct to question those things and challenge those things, not only to make them better, but to expose those flaws in order to make it better. And this episode basically says, you're wrong for doing that. You're wrong for questioning us because we are the morally correct people. And I really think, again, I think that is a dangerous line of thinking to be presenting to the audience.
Or rather, it's okay when Starfleet officers do it. Like, it was okay for Captain Picard to question the morality of Data not being given a choice about being disassembled or not. That was acceptable. But when it's an outside party criticizing us, then it's not acceptable.
Yeah, and that's fundamentally wrong, I think.
Yeah. And this, like I said to Michael earlier, this put me in mind of something that happened over here in the United Kingdom in the last couple of weeks. A team of documentarists had gone out and done a documentary on the doctors and medical staff serving in Gaza right now. They came back and the BBC, our biggest news broadcaster, refused to put the episode on the telly because, in their opinion, it wasn't impartial. The big thing about the BBC is they have to be impartial. They can't be presenting too much in favour of one side or the other.
But truly, how impartial can you be
about
when discussing a genocide?
Yeah. How impartial can you be about people dying at the hands of an invading people? As a result, they've been accused of censorship, they've been accused of parroting the Israeli position, and the documentarists have gone and sold their documentary to one of the other channels on British networks instead. And I'm sure it will be a massive success when it's finally done. But this episode just made me think of that. This whole, you're not being impartial enough about us, so you're in the wrong because you have preconceived notions or you have opinions that we don't agree with. It's so dangerous. And again, it just makes me think of all the right-wing nut jobs in America that, like, the minute they're put under any criticism at all for things that they're doing, it's always, oh, you just don't like us, or you hate us, or it's fake news, or any of this other bullshit that they parrot out when they're too scared, because that's fundamentally what it's about. People being scared to explain their beliefs, because deep down, many of these people know that what they're saying is fucked up, but they're not willing to stand up and say it.
Yep.
And this Star Trek episode conflates that with, well, I'm just following orders. Well, in 1949, many German officers were executed for just following orders. It wasn't any excuse then. it's not an excuse now.
I completely agree. Again, I particularly disliked Captain Pike in this episode for continuously disregarding what his crew are coming to him with, saying like, hey, I have this other idea. I really think we should do this. And he said, no, we have orders. And basically just silencing them outright, saying like, getting frustrated with them for questioning orders when the Federation and Starfleet are supposed to be better than that. Like, they are supposed to be, again, I wouldn't say the morally correct ones all the time, but they allow the members of that Federation to come forward and present their own different ideas and opinions so that there can be a discussion had with that. And Captain Pike and Uhura a lot in this episode were like, no, these are the orders, this is how we're doing it. And I really fundamentally dislike that. Like, to me, this episode proved to me more than ever that Starfleet is a military organization. It is not something better than that. It is just follow your orders, keep your opinions to yourself. If you have a different opinion, well, tough shit. Your orders are law. Your orders are the correct, morally, fundamentally right things all the time. And I abhorrently dislike that. I think that is I think it's terrible messaging, especially given the nature of politics and wars going on today. I think that is a really, really shit message to be putting out there right now.
That's not without even getting into, in universe. We don't know whether these two planets that are at war are part of the Federation. It seems to be that they're not.
Yeah, I think there might have been a line thrown in there somewhere that they are non-Federation worlds. I want to say there was, but I'm not 100%.
But if they are not, and they are perfectly willing, Starfleet is perfectly willing to deliver a weapon of mass destruction, because that's the point. Now, I think some people who are going to defend this episode are going to say, oh, well, if you look at the real world, we're providing weapons to Ukraine to fight the Russians. Is it not the same thing? We haven't supplied a nuclear bomb to the Russians. There is a point between defending yourself and supplying a weapon of mass destruction to somebody, which is going to not only kill soldiers, but also probably kill hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. And true. The idea that Starfleet are delivering this weapon into the waiting hands of their friends on one side of this conflict is, I cannot believe it's in line with the Prime Directive. And even if it is, surely it's got to be against the rule about non-interfering with an internal political affair. Picard desperately tried to not get involved in the Klingon Civil War and the Klingon, the new Chancellor, the succession crisis when, is it Kempok died? Because, as he rightly pointed out, it was an internal Klingon affair. But the Federation was dragged into it. Here, it seems that the Federation is perfectly willing to not only get completely involved, but then deliver an immensely powerful biological weapon into the waiting hands of one side of the conflict. What? That is completely off the top.
You know me. I'm like 7 out of 10 times I'm against the Prime Directive, because I am a firm believer in, if you have the power to help people, regardless of the situation, you should go in and help. That is my personal belief, and I understand why the Prime Directive is there and why so many people are in support of that, yada yada.
Different episode.
But I feel like that could have been this episode. Like, that could have been what this episode was about, and that would have been, in my opinion, a stronger episode to be discussing, hey, this is a clear genocidal conflict here, and we have the power to go and help. Why are we not going to help? Like, that could have been the focal point of the documentary, and I think that would have made for a really, really interesting conversation about the Prime Directive. And kind of like you said, we never really get anything about this conflict? We don't really know much about it at all. We get a very, very vague, like, general oversight of, like, here's the casualty list. That's about it. The rest of it you can just infer for yourself, which I can only assume is them trying their best to not make this too political and make it too, what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like they just didn't want to rock the boat too much with this episode. And
being an American company and all.
And I think that's really unfortunate. Again, given the times that we're in right now and the fact that Star Trek has always taken very firm political stances on things. It's not really in Star Trek's nature to just vaguely reference something and then not actually take a stance on it. And I feel like that's what they did here. They basically just sidestepped taking a stance on that particular issue by making it more about this creature of mass destruction that we kind of wrap up in a nice little bow.
The episode could have focused on the actual conflict from the position of various people involved. Dr. Mbenga could have had more to actually do as medical staff. And it would have been nice also to know the background. Like I say, we don't even know if these planets are Federation. And I think this is something that modern Trek fails repeatedly to understand. Starfleet is not the Federation. Starfleet is just one particular branch, organization that serves a role for the Federation. The Federation itself is a massive political entity, and too often I think New Trek kind of conflates Starfleet as the Federation, and they're not. Fundamentally, like, the president of the Federation could turn around and tell Captain Pike, you're not doing this, and there's nothing Captain Pike would be able to do about it, because the flipping person in charge of you has told you to stop. Like, above all the captains and the admirals and the chief of Starfleet is the president of the Federation. And here it's like Starfleet choosing to get involved in a foreign conflict seemingly without the AOK of staff of the Federation or without any attempt at diplomacy. Like, it seems like they've just gotten involved and they're delivering supplies and we're going to deliver a bomb. They don't even mention that there's been attempts to diplomatically solve the situation in any way, shape or form. It's just, there's a war going on, we're involved.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really big missed opportunities in this episode. And on top of that, really problematic messaging that ends up coming through the episode. So I would personally rank this down towards the bottom of the list of this season's episodes of Star Trek. We've given it a little bit of time since watching the episode to record this, and since then I still can't really decide if I dislike Hegemony Part 2 or this more. I think I'm actually leaning towards I dislike this more, just because I think this poses real life consequences that are not good, whereas Hegemony was just disappointing. This, I'm like, I could see someone watching this and taking the complete wrong message from it, and I think that's very problematic.
This for me puts me in mind of Jurassic World Rebirth, oddly enough. It feels almost like they have completely missed the point, and in some cases has written something that's almost antithetical to the purpose of Star Trek. They've presented this organization as a military organization delivering weapons of mass destruction to people and refusing to question it in any real way. And then at the end of the episode, where everything gets neatly wrapped up in a bow and Captain Pike suddenly convinces Starfleet, let's not do this, and they allow the giant bug to commit suicide, everything wraps itself up. And the end of the episode, the question is, the Federation is about family and people. And I really have a problem with that as well, because it's like, and I think you will understand this quite a lot, Michael. It's this idea that, if you have real big fundamental differences with people in your family, that you just overlook them even if they're really terrible bullshit opinion.
Yeah, and I do very much have a problem with that, because without getting too personal, I have a lot of family members that I very intentionally choose to not associate with very much, because their opinions on things are so drastically different than mine on very important issues. It's not a matter of like, oh, well, I like tomatoes and they don't. It's they believe in a genocide and I don't. Like, it's fundamental problems with how they view other people and how people should be treated and how human rights should be viewed. They're not issues you can just kind of wash to the side. They're really important things that I think paint a clear picture of who that kind of person is. And I agree, it's not as simple as, oh, we're all family, and even if we have differences, we're still all family at the end of the day. It's just not that simple, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so, like I say, like Rebirth, this feels like it's been written almost by someone who doesn't like Star Trek, who is even maybe trying to damage it or take it down a peg, trying to denature it slightly because they don't like maybe how progressive it is or something like that. Which I think makes it fundamentally worse. It's not a bad episode, it is an episode antithetical to even existing in Star Trek. And it's frustrating because this is almost as interesting as Star Trek has ever been since New Trek was a thing. Like, all the way through Discovery and Picard, and Lower Decks was quite different, but in some respects it really wasn't. And then Strange New Worlds has been criticized for being too status quo, and then along comes this episode which had all the potential to be really different, really engaging, really interesting, and they completely fuck it up. And it's frustrating because now, we're just going to go back to episodes of the week and next season a flipping puppet episode. I'm like, why are you doing crap like that when you should be doing stuff like this episode, which felt more like Stargate, more like Battlestar Galactica, and could have been really heavy hitting and really interesting, and
again, things that challenge the status quo
challenged the status quo, and you just mess it up.
Yeah, I think they fundamentally got this one wrong, which really drives me crazy.
And next week's episode is probably not going to help.
Yeah, next week being the We Don't Understand Genetics episode is gonna be really frustrating, I feel like. I mean, they've already released a clip, like way back before the season even started. They released a clip of this episode, and I immediately detested it because, again, it conflates culture with genetics, and those two things are not the same thing. They're so completely not the same thing that it drives me crazy that this is now the second time we're doing it on this show.
Yeah. So this might result in the season having quite a low rating because so far I would say there's been one or two standout episodes, but mostly this season has been disappointing.
Yeah, I would agree, and it drives me crazy because, again, I want new Star Trek to succeed so badly. Like, I really love Star Trek, and I dislike how much people dislike new Star Trek. I think there's plenty of perfectly valid reasons why they don't like new Star Trek. I'll get that straight. But I want it to be good so badly. And this season thus far has kind of proven their point, I feel like. And it's really frustrating considering the first two seasons of the show I love so much.
But let us know what you guys think down below. If you've seen the episode, like I say, go watch the episode. I think even though it's awful, I think it's really interesting and very different. So definitely go and watch it if you haven't. But if you have seen it, what do you guys make of it and its messaging? Let's try and have a good discussion in the comment sections about this episode. If you liked it, explain yourself. I'm willing to listen to you if you're willing to listen to us. Don't forget while you're there also to like the video and subscribe for more content from us at One Trek Mind. And until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.